Sony read the same news, watched the same cable news, listened to the same fools, that Sony would laugh at Apple in 2001, and Apple would have about 24 to 36 months of a head start. And that's exactly what happened. There's an article in the New Yorker, it's called Hanging Tough. And if you Google it, which I have abundance now, I can say Google. If you Google Hanging Tough and the words New Yorker, you're going to read a survey of every recession since 1901. And what it indicates is that towards the end of the recession and before the clear signs of the recovery, the great leaps always happen historically, all of them. Whether it's Kellogg's going from 4th to 1st, launching Rice Krispies in 1932. Whether it's Kraft going from 8th to 2nd in consumer product goods, launching Miracle Whip in 1934. Chevrolet coming out with the Mustang. All these are the things that went on historically. Coming out with the Chevrolet brand. I apologize. 1938 was the Chevrolet brand launch. Chrysler makes the big move to go to number 2. Chrysler was actually at number 2 for a period of time. Historically, over and over again, you see it. Even recently with Hyundai, the car manufacturer from Korea, huge leaps for them in 2009, buying canceled General Motors advertising, pennies on the dollar. These companies have a different information source than everybody else. It causes them to have different thought patterns than everybody else. Great article on confidence and seizing opportunities. Again, it's called Hanging Tough in a publication called The New Yorker. But it comes down to mind food. So one of the things I've started to do to really change my diet is I don't go online for the first 45 minutes I'm awake. And this is an internet guy. And one of the things I've learned from brain research is that your morning is very important to your metabolism. Not just your physical metabolism, because breakfast is one of the most important meals of the day, right? For your body. Tells your metabolism what to do with food all day long. But we've also learned that your first 45 minutes of your waking day determine your emotional metabolism. And I've learned that the World Wide Web is way too random for my taste, so when I get up every morning I do an exercise, which I'll explain in just a minute, and then I read out of a book for about a half hour. And it's usually a book that helps me understand what's coming next in my business life, or one that makes me better at what I do. Because that's positive, constructive, confidence-building material. And one of the things I've learned about brain research is that our brain is not nearly as big as we think it is. Our conscious mind, it's not a Mac with 2 gigs of RAM. I use RAM as a way of talking about the mind, how much it can hold at once. If your brain was a computer, the average person, it'd be like a 1990 ThinkPad with 80 megs of RAM. You know, the kind where if you run too many programs, it just buffers for a while and can't quite work. That's really how small our mind is. Fill it with constructive material. Because we fill it with worry, we fill it with regret, we fill it with gossip. We fill it with the wrong stuff when in fact we can completely crowd everything out with expansive thoughts of constructive, confidence-building material like gratitude, good news, inspirational content, etc. This is an important strategy, but the other thing I would say is for those of you with companies, Chicken Little must fry. When times get tough, we reward the Chicken Littles at work that say the sky is falling because the last thing we want to be in our culture during a recession is hopeful. What we want to be is paranoid, prudish, nose to the grindstone. You can't bring enough bad news to us. And we reward that culture, and that's why we have hangovers. That's what happened to Yahoo. We let the Chicken Littles take the place over by 2002. They were running the place emotionally. It was much more popular to claim things were going wrong than to claim things were going right. So culturally speaking, you got to confront that. We brought in an executive from Reader's Digest who was so frustrated at all the notes he was getting over email that the sky is falling. He had a self-inking red stamp made that said Chicken Little. And he stamped Chicken Little on every email that he got that said the sky was falling, and he had his admin assistant posted on the wall of shame, going to war against this culture inside the corporation. Because again, this fear of poverty is an airborne disease. It's not just what you watch or what you read, it's the people that you hang out with and the kind of conversations that you allow to occur inside your organization. Do we talk about what we have, or do we talk about what we lack? The second piece of advice I'd give you is to exercise your gratitude muscle. Now this is another special from my grandmother Billy. She used to say it all the time. She said gratitude is a muscle, not a feeling. She said if it was a feeling, son, you would feel it all the time. She explained to me that when you see someone with a poor attitude that used to have a good attitude, there's only one explanation for it. They lost their gratitude. Let me illustrate this with the new hire. Now new hires at work, I just think they're so cute. They're just so nice. Especially if you're rescuing a new hire off the couch and they've been there for a year or two. They're just so grateful they got a job, aren't they? And they show up and they're so glad they got business cards. They're so impressed that the coffee is free. They'll say things like, I can't believe they pay me to do this, you know, working in a call center or hauling concrete around. They're just so excited to have work. If they're not led correctly to refresh that gratitude by noticing what's going right or understanding the bounty that's coming into their life, after 2 years, they become a vet. They become cynical. Then all of a sudden, as a veteran of the organization, when some new hire comes in, he's all gung-ho marching around, grateful to be there. What does that cynical vet tell them? You need to slow down, be quiet, you're going to make us all look bad. You see this in organizations all the time. So one of the greatest leadership challenges is to help people rediscover their gratitude. My son Anthony, 25 years old, right out of film school, he gets a job at Apple at store number 1 as a genius at the Genius Bar. Okay, so after about 3 years, I mean, I'm even envious of my own kid. Here's a guy who at the time is like not even 24 years old. He's got stock in Apple. He's got some stock options. He's making more money than I made at 30. And it's, if you've been to a mall with an Apple store, it's like the party in the mall. All the cool people are in that store. They're making $2,800 a square foot, to give you an idea of how effective that retail model is. Anyway, so he comes home for dinner one day, and we're eating, because you know how kids are even when they're in their 20s. They will come home for food and laundry, right? And he says between bites, I'm thinking about exploring my options. My fork hit the plate. What? He says, you know, they've got this new flexible schedule thing going on now, and I had to work last Saturday, and I don't know if I have to work this weekend, and I won't know till tomorrow. He says, this is ridiculous. He says, I'm really good at what I do. He says, I haven't worked weekends since I was 17. He says, and we have heat. He goes, anybody would hire somebody from Yahoo in any job in retail or computers. He goes, I'm going to go find somebody that appreciates me more. He goes, and by the way, the clients are starting to get upset because what they're figuring out is that, you know, Apple and Macintosh, those break too. Those actually do break. They do crash. You got to bring them in. People are not very understanding. So anyway, I was going to give them the typical lecture parents always give their kids in this situation, right? You should be happy. It's a great place. Take a look at the stock performance. Are you nuts? Blah, 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 blah. Can't do that with kids. You got to stage an experience. You got to stage a real experience that challenges their emotions and helps them get it. So the next day, he was going to go hang out with me because I was registering my car. And you know, one of the things kids do love, sometimes especially boys, is they love cars. And it was a little M1, which is the little 135 BMW thing, kind of cool. And so he was going to go with me for the registration that day. So I thought I'd take him on a Dickens Jobs of Past, Present, Future experience. So the first place we stopped by was the Home Depot. That's where he worked when he was in high school when we were living in Northern California. I pulled around back to where the contractors are getting, you know, stuff loaded into trucks. And we saw those lifers with weight belts hauling out, you know, cement and sand and lumber and loading it in. And I said, you know, I got a buddy who's an executive at Home Depot. I mean, you won't have to be one of these guys, but you could be like a store manager here. I'm sure that they would really welcome your retail savvy. Oh, he said, I never want to work with my hands again. You have to lift things to work here. They call them lifers. He said, I would never want to do this again. I thought, well, I'm making some headway. So then I decided to stop at Staples because I had to pick up some stuff. So we go into Staples. If you've been in those big office, big box stores, I mean, it's dead. I mean, it's like there's 4 employees, 2 customers, and morgue music on, right? It was dreadful. So we walk in there, I look around, I said, man, you know, you could take that computer bar over. I'm sure you could be a regional manager. They would never make you work weekends here. You would be a godsend to him. He goes, oh, these stores are all going to go out of business. He goes, everything here but the furniture is an information container. I don't want to be here. This is awful. I almost had him. We had one more stop, the Department of Motor Vehicles. So we go into the DMV, and the first thing you notice is that everybody's mad at everybody, including employees and each other. You know, the only person smiling, you know, at the time is if you go into DMV, there's a picture of the President of the United States, usually framed. That's the only smiling face you see inside the DMV, okay? And I point and I say, you could revolutionize this place. If you figured out the same workflow you guys do, the point of purchase innovation you guys have done, the way that you handle traffic flows and line flows, you could make your mark here. And he looked at me and said, Apple rocks, Dad. He says, I just need perspective. He goes, you know, we were driving home, he goes, I just really enjoy, I can't believe I got so sideways over that. So he kind of recommitted himself, and to this day, he's still with Apple. And one of the takeaways I want you to have about gratitude is that gratitude can be an experience. So I mentioned I have a morning exercise. So the first 45 minutes, I don't go online. I mentioned I read 30 minutes. Let me tell you what I do for the first 10 to 15 minutes every single morning. I did it today before I left Los Angeles. I do a gratitude exercise. And for business folk, I call it role-based gratitude. Because if you are grateful for the people that help you at work in your role, you will be a better boss and a better leader. So when I wake up in the morning, I think about 2 people that helped me yesterday in my work life succeed. I think about them. I think about what effort they put in. I think about the impact it had either on the business or on me personally. But the secret to this whole exercise is I dial into their intentions. I just don't think like I did today, wow, I really appreciate Mark Carter. The guy stayed up till midnight processing reports so that we could be on time with our client this morning on a deliverable. And I went past that, though, and I thought about the impact, I thought about the financial impact, but I'm like, why did he do it? And what I realized is that he's really on board with the mission of our company, that he really cares about the company, that he'd do anything for us to succeed. I think about somebody else in my life. Why did they do that? Because they support me and care about me. Gratitude will teach you that you're not alone. And it'll focus your mind from your waking moments on what you have and not what you have. The other thing I do, the third part of this, is I think about somebody in the coming day that's going to help me be successful. And I think about that person. Sometimes it's a person I haven't met face to face. In fact, it was a person here. And I think about her, I think about the stuff she set up, I think about the details that are going to get taken care of. It's going to be a smooth day, it's going to be a great experience. I think about why. It's the support of this idea, this book, this message. When you start your day off that way, you're starting off with a very expansive thought. Brain research says that gratitude is expansive. It grows on itself. The more you think about it, the bigger it gets. It grows as fast as fear. It grows as fast as jealousy and resentment. And that's what I fill my mind with. I know a company that every time that they feel like the team is down, they will take the team into the room and do an exercise where they're like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're the HR person. And here's the exercise. You all have your jobs back on one condition, that you get up with a magic marker and a whiteboard right now and you show us, if you were brand new at this company, 3 reasons that we could do something with this business. In other words, you're going to get up right now like a new hire would and see this company through fresh eyes, understanding what assets we have to bear, our reputation, our stuff, our contracts, our product line, etc. And this manager at Regis that does this says it has a remarkable impact on people. Because if people can find a way to re-experience their company as an asset and not a liability, it changes everything. In my role, I've learned the secret to gratitude is to convert those have-tos in lives to get-tos. Because if you live your life thinking everything's an obligation, I have to go to work, I have to take my kids to play soccer, I have to read this book, you will be miserable your whole life and it will impact your performance. I remember when Billy had breast cancer, she came to live with us. And I'll never forget one day taking her in for therapy. She was such a spirited person. She didn't know I was watching her. She's sitting on the edge of the bed, slapping her hands together, saying, I'm not going to cry like Job. She says, I am going to be the most kind person they've ever seen at the center. This is my opportunity to beat this, to lick this, to win one more time. And she used to talk about chemotherapy as something she got to do. She got to go in and minister to these wonderful nurses that loved her and took care of her. And her attitude was so different, but her happiness through this very trying time inspired me to say, Tim, you can't say I've got to go take my kid to play baseball. I've got to take a trip to go do a business meeting. I begin to look at everything in my life as a breathtaking opportunity, and it's the only way you can sustain your performance over time. Final point I want to make, number 3, give to be rich. Billy taught me there's 2 kinds of rich in this world. There's money rich on paper, and there's rich in spirit. She says rich on paper comes and goes. In her life, she'd gained and lost everything 3 times. About a year after she took me in, her husband of over 20 years left, took all the stuff, took the car, drained the bank accounts, ran credit lines up around town, even took her 2 teenage boys and left her all alone with me and her mom had.